Hello you absolute legends. In speedrunning, there have been two categories which are far and away the most popular to not only speedrun, but also spectate. The first is the most obvious, any percent, where the only goal is to reach the end of the game without any restrictions. And the second is 100%, which involves completing every metric or objective and obtaining every item that a game keeps track of. While any percent generally attracts more speedruns in terms of volume because the speedruns are shorter, it's usually the 100% category that attracts more viewers for the exact same reason. However, Doom speedrunning has always been a very interesting anomaly. When you complete a level in Doom, it provides you with 4 very easy to understand metrics: the time, the percentage of kills, the percentage of items, and the percentage of secrets. And given that 100% is such a popular category in speedrunning, you'd be forgiven for assuming that Doom speedrunners also compete in this way. But what's fascinating is that this category of beating a level with 100% everything just doesn't exist in Doom, and it never has. It doesn't even have a name. Doom speedrunners will do just about anything else, like beating a level with no restrictions, which is called UV speed, or beating a level without damaging enemies, which is called UV pacifist, or beating a level getting 100% kills and secrets, which is called UV max, but not a single time in history has anyone ever seriously competed for 100% everything. You would think the UV max category, given its name, would mean max everything, but they don't care at all how many items you collect. You could have 0% items and it makes no difference. Doom speedrunners just generally don't have any interest in picking up items, and never have. But I was curious to see what would happen if the best Doom speedrunners in the world were forced to pick up items and get 100% everything. I wanted to know if this would be an interesting speedrun, and what better map to conduct this experiment than Doom's very first level, E1M1. So I created a competition and offered $500 for first place, along with a couple of disc plates for each of the top 10. And I gave players 3 weeks to see what they could come up with, and I must say the results were amazing. The speedrun that ended up winning is simply beautiful, and the requirement to pick up every item added enough complexity to produce brand new, never-before-seen strategies. It breathed new life into a level that had been heavily competed in for the past 30 years. In today's video, we will take a look at what happens when the best Doom players are forced to revisit the very first level of Doom and pick up items they may never have before. And before we get into it, I want to give a big thanks to Displate for allowing this competition to happen and sponsoring the prizes. I honestly love Displate, and I think they make incredible looking posters. Displate works with all of your favorite media, so if you love a video game or a movie or a TV show, you should definitely celebrate it by grabbing a Displate and putting it on your wall. They are super easy to install, they don't require any invasive holes because of their magnet mounting system, and you can swap them around in just a few seconds. Not only will buying a Displate improve the aesthetic of your room and brighten your day, but it will also help to make future competitions possible. Not just with Doom, but with other games as well. Support me by supporting Displate and get yourself a poster so we can do more of these competitions in the future. Just use my link in the description to grab an exclusive discount for your new Displates, or shop with my code Carl to get up to 33% off. So why is it exactly that Doom speedrunners don't like picking up items? Well, we first have to be honest and acknowledge that the item counter in Doom is a bit broken. Half of the objects that you would assume would be items aren't even counted, like medikits, armor, weapons, and ammo. The likely reason is that these items aren't always able to be picked up. For example, if you have over 100% health, you can't pick up a medikit, and if you have full ammo, you can't pick up ammo. However, you can for some reason pick up these small ammo and health bonuses that are scattered everywhere throughout levels, even if your health and armor are completely full. This seems a tad inconsistent, because it is. The reality is that the item counter appears to be a vestigial organ, a feature that at one time served a purpose, but in the final release it was mostly abandoned. In fact, the idea of picking up items at all is just a leftover from Wolfenstein 3D. And if you've played Wolfenstein 3D or the games of the same era that use its engine, maze-like levels full of secret doors and packed with random collectible treasure was the norm. Wolfenstein 3D especially was littered with an almost comical amount of hidden treasure that you were encouraged to find and collect. This treasure would both give you points and would also be tracked on the final screen. And this concept of collecting treasure did initially pass over to Doom. In a video recorded in the id Software offices in November of 1993, before the official release of Doom, there is footage captured of John Romero playing through a beta version. And in that version, we can clearly see items that look like treasure. And these unused textures still exist inside the game's code. We can even see that when you pick up these treasures, your health and armor increases by 1%. Though at some point before release, these treasures were replaced with the typical armor and health bonuses we see today. I don't know the exact reason why treasures were removed, but I assume it was because id Software realized that running around collecting treasure isn't what made Doom fun to play. It was the action. And this concept of picking up items for points is not why anyone would play a first-person shooter. It's merely a relic of times past that had not yet been put out of its misery. However, despite the fact that treasures were turned into health and armor bonuses, the item counter on the mission complete screen was kept, and that's why it appears the way it does today. Still, why don't people compete for 100% items? The real answer is that id Software just happened to put all of the bonuses in the most obnoxious places possible. They are almost exclusively placed in the corner of rooms and small crevices, and there are a ton of them. Needing to go around to every part of the map and run around every corner of every room just to collect items would become incredibly tedious incredibly quickly. It would essentially ruin the very thing that makes Doom so amazing. The feeling of blazing through levels, mowing down enemies, taking full advantage of Doom's extremely smooth movement mechanics. In a nutshell, it's not fun. It never was fun, and thus nobody wanted to do it. Still, I was curious to see what would happen if items were a requirement, and E1M1 in the Ultimate Doom is as simple as it is iconic. The current UV max record on E1M1 is 24 seconds held by Cook, and he finished that run with 2% items. So we can already tell there is going to be quite a large difference between the existing runs and my challenge. While there are of course some items that are relatively in the way of the existing route, there are 3 areas that are completely novel and are places speedrunners never go on E1M1. The first are the stairs near the start of the level. In the UV Max run, this area is only briefly visited to grab a shotgun, but around these pillars and up the stairs are bonuses that must be collected. Near the end of the level, there are also bonuses in rooms on either side that are otherwise ignored, and the single biggest deviation are the bonuses through the tunnel, which is only accessible via the secret lift. UV Max does visit this lift to trigger the secret, but it's not actually used because you don't need to go up. Before the competition began, I spent a few hours doing some of my own attempts, and barely managed to get a time of 59 seconds. I am not a Doom speedrunner, and it was immediately apparent to me that collecting items made things exponentially more difficult. Because the bonuses are placed in such annoying positions, they require extreme finesse and precision in order to collect quickly. Most of the time I was bumping into walls left, right, and center trying to collect bonuses, and now I can totally understand why this never became an official category. But there was no way I could predict just how fast top Doom speedrunners would be able to complete this challenge. Within a day of the competition beginning, the UV Max record holder Cook blew my time out of the water, achieving a run of 45 seconds. And what's surprising is that he used a completely different route. Cook made use of the secret button near the start and used the outside area to cut through the level. He wasn't sure if this was faster than the standard route, but his reasoning is that it made the secret lift timing much more consistent. And it's the secret lift that truly separates this challenge from UV Max. The lift is triggered when you or an enemy cross this line at the entrance of the zigzag room. It will stay at the bottom for a few seconds and then automatically go back up. In UV Max, it doesn't really matter when this gets triggered, as long as it's down when you get there, so you can grab the secret. But if you have to go up the lift, now the timing of the lift becomes very important. If the lift is triggered slowly, you'll have to wait several seconds before going up. So there is now a huge variable that needs to be addressed. In my own practice run, I ran to activate the lift myself, because I'm not a world-class speedrunner, but good players will need to rely on this enemy here to walk over the line so they don't need to go out of their way. And by using the outside path, this zombie man will activate the lift at a pretty consistent timing. One thing that immediately impressed me were some cool optimizations that were already being implemented, like peeking out to shoot as the lift was going up to take out an enemy. Every shot counts in this run, and if you can use time you'd otherwise have spent waiting to get a shot off, that's time saved. After grabbing these secrets, Cook then went back to the second room to clear it, before going to the end. A day later, the runner Coincident, who I covered in a recent video after he completed Okuplock for the first time, also achieved a run of 45 seconds, this time using the more traditional route. So now we had two different routes achieving the same time. However, the traditional route seemed to introduce a problem. As you enter the zigzag room, you trigger the secret lift yourself. And if the zombie man crosses that line before the lift finishes its cycle, it won't go back down. The lift will only be triggered if it has already completed its full cycle, so the zombie man can't be too fast. And because now you're coming from the opposite direction as opposed to Cook's run, now the zombie man starts moving in the opposite direction and can ultimately end up getting back to the line to trigger the lift very slowly. So now you have to rely on enemy movement RNG in order to have optimal lift timing. A few more days into the competition, the player Intuition achieved a time of 44 seconds using Cook's route, and you can see the lift timing is really good, with the lift going up as soon as Intuition reached it. This run was pretty good, but unfortunately, unbeknownst to many players at the time, this route turned out to be several seconds slower than the traditional one. And this is why it's very important to perform your own concrete tests in speedrunning when presented with multiple route options. Zero Master did his own test and knew pretty much immediately that the standard route would be faster, as did some of the other top players. But because the leading entry of the competition at the time was Cook's route, this led many players into simply copying it and giving themselves a huge disadvantage. Shortly after Intuition first achieved 44, he ran his own test and realized immediately that the route was slow, and after this performed another 44 using the traditional method. However, the lift timing was still a problem, and you can see in his run he needed to wait almost 2 seconds for it to go up, and the run even had some other major time losses, so this was clearly the strategy to use, and if the lift timing was optimized, the run could obviously go much lower. Several days later, Intuition's 44 would get absolutely demolished by the runner Ori, who achieved a time of 41 seconds. The movement was now starting to get insane. Ori was already a full second ahead of Intuition by the first door, and was 2 seconds ahead entering the zigzag room. The lift timing was perfect with it going up immediately, however, because Ori was a tiny bit slow getting to the lift, he didn't have time to quickly pop out and shoot this imp as the lift was going up. This meant he had to slow down and wait before going to the end to kill it, which cost around a second. So really, this run could have been around 40 seconds. One thing to note is how Ori went down the stairs of the secret area to take out these shotgunners. This might seem slow, but it really doesn't make any difference ultimately, as every run is going to be capped by the speed of the lift anyway. So as long as you can get back to the lift before it goes up, you don't lose time. What's even more important is making sure every shotgun blast counts. So running down the stairs and getting closer to these two shotgunners increases the chance of killing both of them with one shot. But there is also a secret benefit, which is the way this affects the zombie man that triggers the lift. If you wait near the top of the stairs, the angle that the zombie man walks towards you means he walks over the line triggering the lift earlier. If you go down the stairs, he starts to walk diagonally, causing him to cross the line later and stay on top of the line for longer. And if he is directly on top of the line when the lift finishes its first cycle, it will be called down immediately. This dramatically increases the lift's consistency and speed. A few days after Ori's 41, Cook would strike back with a ridiculous run of 40.14 seconds, almost breaking the 40-second barrier. This run was very similar to Ori's run, however, he didn't need to slow down near the end. While Cook also didn't manage to get a shot off while going up the lift, he was able to avoid slowing down because he killed both imps before going up, and the enemy remaining could be killed without stopping. And this comes down to which enemies you're able to kill while waiting for the lift. With optimal lift timing, from the moment you open the second last door to enter this room, which you need to do first to lower the platform which exposes the room the lift is in, to when the lift goes up, you have enough time for 7 shotgun blasts. And we can count them in Cook's run. Which also happened to be the exact same in Ori's run. But Cook used 2 of those shots to kill both imps, while Ori used only 1, which left 1 imp alive. This wouldn't have been a problem if Ori shot the imp while the lift was going up, but because he wasn't able to, the imp was left alive and ended up being in a terrible position. Another thing to point out is that while Cook and Ori both had the second last door open, Ori got really lucky. The idea, as demonstrated in Cook's run, is to open the door and stand to the left. This way the imp near the barrel moves away, so when the barrel explodes, the imp doesn't die. If the imp doesn't die, he will open the door while you're in the lift area and get stuck, causing it to be open when you return. In Ori's run, the imp moved into the barrel and died instantly, but he ended up getting super lucky because the second barrel, which usually kills the 2 zombie men standing nearby, left 1 alive, and he opened the door instead, which is incredibly rare. Cook's 40-second run was already extremely impressive, and honestly I wasn't sure if this would be beaten, especially because the competition only had a few days remaining. And it makes sense that Cook was winning because he already held the world record for UV max on this level. But in the shadows, another UV max expert was also grinding. A player known as Kinetic, who has a ton of UV max world records in both Doom 1 and 2, and he had secretly figured out the level down to a science. And on the last day of the competition, he dropped this absolute banger. This run is beyond insane. Kinetic's movement in the first half of the level was optimized even further. In the second room, he changed the order in which he collected the armor bonuses, and this enabled him to get through faster. A great way to compare how fast things are is by the amount of shotgun blasts, which we can easily count. In Cook's 40, it takes 6 shots to clear this room. And in Kinetic's run, it only takes 5. Entering the zigzag room, Kinetic is already almost a full second ahead of Cook's run. From this door to the lift is once again 7 shots, but Kinetic's movement was so fast, he was able to get to the lift and get into position to fire off that extra shot while on the lift. This meant he could focus entirely on the movement back to the end, and his movement in general was just impeccable. This run is a masterpiece, especially because it was performed in such a short time. In my opinion, adding the requirement to collect every item created the most beautiful speedrun on E1M1 that currently exists. While the standard runs of 8 seconds are surely more optimized, Kinetic's 100% item run is just so much more fun to watch. So does this mean that this category should now exist? And should Doom speedrunners start competing for 100% items on every level? No, I really don't think so. E1M1 is a simple level and is super iconic, which made it perfect for this challenge. But applying the same requirement to almost any other level would make it a nightmare to play. So I really don't think this category will ever catch on. A huge congratulations to Kinetic for winning my challenge. Everyone who watched this video appreciates the work of art you managed to produce. Thanks also to everyone who entered, and as part of the competition I also said that 3 random people will be receiving a disc plate, so congratulations to these 3 entrants. You'll be receiving an email shortly. I really want to do more competitions like this in the future, but they are only possible if we can get a sponsor. So please, once again, use the link in the description to grab a disc plate. If this performs well, we can do another one soon. If you have a specific game or challenge in mind that you think would be great for a competition, please let us all know in the comments. Thank you so much for watching, you legends. I hope you're having a fantastic day, and I will see you in the next video.